second interview is with the enabler, Santhosh Jayaram, which is the Chief Operating Officer of Marshall FinTech Partners. Welcome, Mr. Santhosh. My first question is, of course, you're the Chief Operating Officer of Marshall FinTech Partners. I want to know more about your company and how has your company leveraged innovation like blockchain and AI to enhance the efficiency and security of cross-border payments, also, more importantly, and particularly for international commerce.
Yeah, lovely to be here, Dina. So just a quick overview about what we do. So we are the oldest. It's working. So we're the oldest payments company in the Middle East and Africa region, and we power a lot of the commerce. Sorry. Am I audible? Oh, okay. So first of all, lovely to be here, and just a quick overview about what we do. We are the oldest payments company in the Middle East and Africa region, and we power a lot of the commerce that happens across the region. Everyone in our day-to-day life has used what we provide, but no one necessarily seems to know us, right? And we're completely fine with that. And that's the nature of being a true enabler in that perspective. So just to come to your question, see, our role in enabling payments and efficiencies across the chain is quite extensive. So the first is, for example, if you look at financing that typically happens at a point of sale. The point of sale is traditionally any point of interaction where a sale happens. And that perspective, if you see, the point of interaction becomes very important, and our role is basically to enable embedded financing and various other capabilities at the point of sale, and that essentially allows consumers and the actual businesses to leverage the benefits of these sort of technologies that come out of it, right? We've also enabled IoT capabilities, which essentially drive efficiencies across the entire chain, from the actual factory to the local warehouse to the end store. This is something that we don't necessarily see as consumers, but from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense, and there are actually a lot of efficiencies that can be driven by streamlining a lot of the operational challenges that people traditionally face. Coming to some of the newer technologies that we've seen from an AI perspective, see, our role has been to enable also or provide for, facilitate a lot of these new kind of payment methods that are coming about. So we've seen, for example, what Ripple has traditionally tried to do in the region. We've tried to provide a lot of payment solutions which will enable a cross-border as well, and try to drive down the costs of paying suppliers, essentially. So those sort of things drive a lot of benefits, which to the business, but ultimately that has the potential to be passed on to the end consumer also, right? So these are the ways that we've been traditionally trying to do. Also, we've partnered with people who try to drive down the cost of fraud, because fraud is a big challenge in much of what we do. In the environment that we operate in, and these solution providers, what we essentially partner with, try to bring down the instances of fraud, and ultimately those work out to be cost savings, which can essentially go back to the consumer if that's part of the chain, right? So this is in a way that we traditionally try to power.
Definitely. You've been in the field for quite a while, fintech in particular. You even told me that you've been in the region for the past 20 years. Am I correct?
Personally, yeah.
I want to know, in your opinion, how has technology, AI, blockchain made this field much more efficient? Can you give me an example, possibly?
I think it's a great democratization tool, right? I mean, it allows by providing a platform where everyone can participate. So earlier, when the costs of entry, the barriers to entry were higher, that became a challenge for a lot of people to participate, and that sort of never drove the kind of inclusion that essentially allows for a lot of people to participate and basically drive more commerce. And this is something that we've seen, that the platforms today allow for a lot more participation from various elements, right? And ultimately, the way that people traditionally tend to get excluded is because the cost of facilitating any of these interactions from different chains to chains tends to be quite high. And what we've seen is that by the introduction of some of these platforms over the past years, it's enabled a lot of these costs to come down, right? And that's where the potential is for savings. And now the work is it's just the beginning, and we've not even scratched the surface of what the actual potential is. But not just us, there are a lot of other enablers in the market, solution providers. I think with the way that we've seen a lot of the adoption that's been happening, I think the outlook is quite good in terms of how that can go out and improve the lives of people. Right? Ultimately, it has to benefit the end consumer, because all these efficiencies have to ultimately make products and services more. The penetration has to go up, and you have to make more people. They give them the ability to enjoy more of these services, and that's what we're trying to do essentially.
Definitely. And speaking of solution providers, obviously you provide payment solutions. I want to know, how do you approach scaling your payment solutions to meet the diverse technological and regulatory needs of global trade partners?
So, as much as we'd like to have the best and greatest tech from a lot of across the world come to where we are, the challenges remain in a lot of localization, right? So what essentially might work in China may not work in our region. We've seen a lot of traction happening in markets like India, but again, will that work here? We have to wait and see. And there's a lot of these solutions which have traditionally been localized for those markets because they serve to address a lot of local problems, right? But at the same time, there are these global bodies which exist, which try to drive a certain level of standardization. We've seen with the availability of schemes, which drive traditional plastic acceptance. That's just a very basic example. But the regulatory environment is something that is important from a perspective that it drives a lot of standardization. So if a business wants to move from one environment, one territory, or one location to the other, it has to make sure that whatever they have in one place is essentially the same to some large degree to in the other, right? So that essentially helps. And also the challenge that we've seen historically is there's a lack of interoperability. So it's like in many cases like a square peg in a round hole, right? So as much as those work locally, they don't necessarily work in a larger context. So the interoperability is what we've seen that it helps make the availability of these systems penetrate in a lot of other markets, right? For example, we've seen how Swift has basically revolutionized the way that money gets moved. And now with the availability of these blockchain platforms and a lot of, like, we've seen Ripple and all these other people try to do amazing work, we will see that the regulation and the interoperability will go hand in hand to drive the benefits that will essentially make a lot of the standardization that we think that will make. Again, from our perspective, we are trying to bring down the cost for everybody, right? So the more standardization, the lesser cost, right? So the interoperability brings in, and we've also seen a lot of traction as far as open banking is concerned. So the enablement of again, that's from an interoperability perspective. So you make everything talk to each other, and ultimately, the goal is to reach some level of open finance as well, where you try to drive the availability of services, different services, and plug in different service providers by leveraging a lot of the data. So this is where I think a lot of these benefits will start penetrating, and obviously the larger supply chain is it's a very complicated enterprise, right? So I think there'll be a lot of these solution providers which try to work on different parts of it rather than trying to solve everything at once. I feel that in the coming years, a lot of this will begin to take change, and now the challenges are going to be slightly different, right? So we've essentially over the past 3 months seen at least past 4 years, but at least past 3 months seen the breakup of globalization, right? There's a lot of insourcing and localization. That's the flair of the moment, right? The flavor of the moment. So that will bring in a lot of different challenges as well, and maybe what we have may not suit that environment. So.
And just to wrap things up, if you could tell me, how do you envision climate conscious payment technologies to influencing international commerce and also driving ESG compliance across borders?
So from our perspective, we've tried to do a few things, right? So firstly, we've tried to go as paperless as possible, and that's a concept that, in theory, is, why do we need paper in a lot of places? The fact remains that as much as we try to be paperless, a lot of the institutions that are compliance related still ask for a lot of paper, right? And that's changing. So we basically try to go green to a large degree, and because we power a lot of the lot of the region's commerce, we've tried to bring in or embed either our own solutions or empower a lot of third-party solution providers to basically do that, right? And also, there's a lot of focus now on trying to drive carbon capture and basically carbon tracking. So anything that allows us to first understand what that is, what is the impact of how much carbon is getting emitted into every step of the way is generated from it, is ultimately something that, because we control or have visibility across the chain, we've tried to bring in a lot of the metrics around that, right? And that's where we feel that a lot of the ESG initiatives will get. But again, this is the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot of technological innovations which will bring in more and more efficiencies. We hopefully will.
Definitely. Mr. Santos, thank you so much.
Thank you.